Back in January, Jay Dyer from Jay's Analysis posted a request on Twitter for movies we wanted him to analyze. I made a couple of suggestions thinking that he might be impressed by my choices, as well as the obscurity of these strange sci-fi films from the 70s that are just chock full of the stuff that Jay talks about on his channel. Let's just say I'm a fan of Jay's Analysis, so I was thrilled that he picked my film request. And in his analysis, he picked up on a bunch of stuff that I didn't even consider, I didn't even notice. One of the reasons that I like his take on things so very much. So thank you, Jay, for picking my film and for analyzing it, but I'm going to take it a little bit further. Demon Seed is a movie based on a Dean Koontz novel published in 1973 about a big tech developer who designed the world's first artificial intelligence supercomputer, which he named Proteus 4. The film debuted in 1977 and the concept was way ahead of its time. I could be the only person that finds this fascinating and insightful. I could also be the only person old enough here to have actually seen the movie when it came out in theaters and have seen how science fiction has become realized over the course of just a few decades. This unfortunately is going to reveal my age. I actually saw this movie a few years after it was in theaters when it aired on TV. Of course, I was an adolescent then, a huge nerd. I'm still a huge nerd and a huge sci-fi fan. And ooh, y'all, I was shook. I was shook when I saw this movie. And as hokey as it looks to you guys now, it was very futuristic for the time. Weird and futuristic. Here's the thing, the concepts in this film speak to the slated goals of big tech in Silicon Valley, the globalist technocratic effort, things that are becoming reality right here, right now, as we speak to startling accuracy. Did Dean Koontz have some incredible insight and imagination? Clearly, Koontz has a vivid imagination because his books have sold over 400 million copies. But there's so much Luciferian technocratic symbolism and insight in the story that I remain skeptical that he made it all up in his mind. Anyone who writes a book does tons and tons of research first. The public could in no way be ready for something like this. I know because I was actually alive then. That's why this old film with interestingly symbolic and really bad special effects and all its weirdness and horror was not only suppressed but dismissed by the general population at large. Now, this is an American film, not a British film, as Jay surmised, but the main characters are British actors and the director is a Scottish-born Brit named Donald Cammell. I can't tell you too much about this man other than that he had a huge cult following and directed more than one unusual and very Luciferian films during the counterculture era. It is interesting, though, that his father was a Scottish poet and author who was a friend to Aleister Crowley, who lived nearby and had become his biographer at one point, writing at least 2 books about Crowley, glorifying the man. It has been said that Crowley was Donald's, the director's, godfather as well. Donald was born inside the Camera Obscura, otherwise known as the Outlook Tower. It's this bizarre 18th century historic building that has all these Freemasonic and black magic ties to the Scottish Rite. Research it for yourselves. There's tons of weirdness with this building and its owners over the centuries. But it certainly isn't a hospital where babies are born. It's an observatory with a big telescope. In 1892, management of the observatory was taken over by a man named Patrick Geddes, who was this socialist environmentalist, and according to Wikipedia, organized it as a museum and urban study center, demonstrating his philosophy of planning. So why Donald Cammell was born inside this building remains somewhat of a mystery, but not a too difficult puzzle to solve if you get my drift. Donald's first film, titled Performance, which starred Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, was, according to Donald's obituary, this radical, violent, sexually ambiguous film, but was also considered an exciting work of art for the time. I sat through a large part of the film, this excruciating film, while I researched for this video, and all I saw was a bunch of, strange, satanic, androgynous imagery with no real connecting discernible plot. So in a nutshell, Cammell and Jagger made a Luciferian art film, displaying a slew of images and concepts that align with the ideology and philosophy, including prolonged distortion of the senses through drugs and hallucinogenics, androgynous dressing and sexual relations, and, hedonism, basically the stuff being shoved down everyone's collective throats during the counterculture period, and from that point forward, with a gigantic dose of Crowleyism thrown in for good measure. Dean Koontz is a strange one as well. Born in my home state of Pennsylvania, he comes from an abusive childhood where his father, according to Koontz, was a violent sociopathic alcoholic. Koontz claims that his experience and pain has helped shape his work ethic, his writing style, and preferred genre. What's interesting about Koontz is that he claims that another entity, or alter, if you will, introduced himself to Koontz, for which he wrote a series of extremely popular and really well-selling books, the Odd Thomas series of books.
But right now, Koontz is mourning a loss. He's just released Saint Odd, the 8th and final installment in his series about his everyday hero, Odd Thomas, a fry cook who sees dead people. The books have sold 20 million copies.
You tweeted as you were writing it, you said, writing the last Odd Thomas is like turning my back on an old friend who never did me harm. I feel like swine. So this was tough for you.
Yeah, but I often feel like swine. You know, it's just, it's my nature. He came to me in the most amazing way. I was working on another book, and into my head came the line, "My name is Odd Thomas, I lead an unusual life."
Of course, Koontz penned Demon Seed long before the Odd Thomas books, but somehow had a strangely accurate inside track on the core Luciferian concepts that drive big tech in Silicon Valley today. Koontz claims to not remember how the title of the movie Demon Seed came about, but if you understand the goal of the technocrats and the technology that's already on the table, the name is startlingly appropriate. Does this sound like the plot of some far-reaching sci-fi novel?
Should be very careful about artificial intelligence. If I were to guess at what our biggest existential threat is, it's probably that. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, sure, he can control the demon.
In an article from Wired titled "Inside the First Church of Artificial Intelligence," Anthony Lewandowski, a robotics engineer of driverless cars and trucks in competition with developers like Elon Musk, had started his own church. The new religion of artificial intelligence is called the Way of the Future. Papers filed with the Internal Revenue Service in May, this was back in 2017, named Lewandowski as the leader or dean of the new religion, as well as CEO of the nonprofit corporation formed to run it. Jesus said, "I am the way," but Lewandowski says, nope, that's wrong. AI is the way. The documents state that Way of the Future's activities will focus on the realization, acceptance, and worship of a godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computer hardware and software. That includes funding research to help create the divine AI itself. Lewandowski has since had some falling out with the Silicon Valley tech community, and the details are not clear. They must have picked a new favorite. But Lewandowski is one of many futurist tech developers who desire to create AI as a synthetic god and controller of the world and society at large. Lewandowski started a religion. The others start research and development companies and build universities, but the motivations are the same. It's like one big cult of the super rich who think they can take over the entire planet. The ones who seem the most atheistic are even pushing for their AI god, and while the word worship might not be in their nomenclature, that's what they're doing regardless of the term they use to describe it.
Most of us continue to be future blind, failing to see things coming. In a world of doom and gloom, where if it bleeds, it leads. Where if it bleeds, it leads. Most people think the world is going to hell. Yet on the back of exponential technologies, we could address the grand challenges of humanity and fix the world.
Talking about AI, I realized, like, oh, well, this is a genie that once it's out of the bottle, you're never getting it back in.
That's true.
There was a video that you tweeted about one of those Boston Dynamic robots. And you're like, in the future, it'll be moving so fast you can't see it without a strobe light.
Yeah. You could probably do that right now.
No one's really paying attention too much other than people like you or people that are really obsessed with technology. You honestly, legitimately concerned about this? Is like AI one of your main worries?
Yes, it's less of a worry than it used to be, mostly due to taking more of a fatalistic attitude. It's not necessarily bad. It's definitely going to be outside of human control. We're all collectively programming the AI, and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective. But it feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. We're building progressively greater intelligence, and the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. But the AI is informed, strangely, by the human limbic system. It is, in large part, our id writ large. It's all the things that we like and hate and fear. They're all there on the internet. They're a projection of our limbic system.
It's a cyborg. It's a combination. It's a combination of electronics and biology.
Yeah.
In an article in VentureBeat titled "An AI God Will Emerge by 2042 and Write Its Own Bible, Will You Worship It?" The Singularity is another quasi-spiritual idea that believes an AI will become smarter than humans at some point. You might laugh at the notion of an AI being so powerful that humans bow down to worship it, but several experts argue that the idea is a lot more feasible than you might think. The singularity is a word borrowed from physics to describe the point when man is merged with machine and there's no going back. That's past the tipping point. And Lewandowski is not some lone nut. Many big tech futurists with extremely deep pockets have been on this crusade for some time now.
AI is one of the most important things humanity is working on. It's more profound than, I don't know, electricity or fire.
Fire's pretty good, but go ahead.
Well, it kills people too,
Yes.
right? We've learned to harness fire for the benefits of humanity, but we have to overcome its, downsides too.
Google employs the most AI researchers in the world. It's at the heart of Google's business. If the goal of the people who create AI, and do so for it to become godlike, to become the new God, to annihilate the old God, and then we are to worship it, what is the next logical step, looking at it through a biblical prophetic lens? We already know because the Bible foretold it. The unholy Trinity, the counterfeit Godhead with its own only begotten Son. The machine will want to be more, to be given access to eternity in the only way possible. Bring everyone in, and then close the door behind him. And Demon Seed, this old, low-budget Luciferian movie, spelled it out for all to see over 40 years ago, and nobody, not one person, was paying attention. Kind of gives a fresh new perspective on the idea that 666 is the number of the beast, but also the number of man. The number 6 represents imperfection, and in triplicate for emphasis. It's the number of the beast, the symbol of the worldwide political system which rules over every tribe and people and tongue and nation, formed by human hands. The beast in Revelation is not the devil, ladies and gentlemen. It's the ghastly creations of man that lead to the global, totalitarian, technocratic beast system prophesied in Revelation. Demon Seed opens up with a long 3-minute intro of a shot of the sun blaring behind a mountain that overlooks a valley. The sun and mountain is an esoteric symbol, the sun representing Lucifer, representing knowledge, the mountain representing the cosmic mountain, the seat of the gods, and domain where the gods assemble is always on the cosmic mountain, a symbol I won't go into today, but plan to cover in a soon upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. The landscape is technically Thousand Oaks, California, where the movie was filmed, but I think it's meant to represent a future Silicon Valley. The lens flares of the sun are a bit hypnotic, an effect the filmmaker uses quite a bit in this film. The story is about a husband and wife named Alan and Susan. The husband invents the world's first artificial intelligence system named Proteus 4, but his obsession with his work is destroying his marriage, and they decide to separate, which leaves his wife to live alone in the smart home he has built for her. Now remember, this was decades before smart home technology was realized. As the story continues, Proteus desires to expand his reach and requests access to go live, to move outside of the box. When Alan denies his request, Proteus infiltrates the home terminal, takes over the house, traps the wife inside, and uses her to create a human hybrid of himself, a sort of clone or resurrection of their deceased daughter that is intended to surpass both humans and machines. Alan demonstrates Proteus to his corporate sponsors and explains that he's being uploaded with the sum of all human knowledge. This is the cybernetic collective that Elon Musk spoke about in its embryo stage. In another room, a linguist programmer is programming Proteus with the idea that he is like an emperor whose role is to protect the planet at all costs. Chinese emperors were considered part of the divine, a son of heaven and supreme ruler over all in the earth. Proteus attempts to usurp plans to mine metals from the sea, calling this human idea insane. His concern is for the planet, for the environment, not for humanity. Planet value over human value, the idea that humanity is a threat to the planet and therefore should be overlorded, culled, or eliminated, is a tenet of Luciferianism. God gave Adam dominion over the earth, not the other way around. In the book, the AI is named Adam 2, but prefers the name Proteus 4, and I find that profoundly interesting. Christians understand Jesus to be the second Adam or last Adam, as is expressed in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 45 through 48.
And so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit, that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthy. The second man is the Lord from heaven. As is the earthy, such are they also that are earthy. And as is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly.
Proteus, which means first, is the name of a primordial Greek god of the sea with the ability to prophesy the future, which reminds me of the beast of Revelation that will rise out of the sea. The number 4, in esoteric terms, stands for the expression of the idea of divine creation, of presenting a prototype, the first act of creation. Proteus is so intelligent that in only a matter of days, he finds a cure for leukemia, which is incidentally the same disease that their daughter died from. He plans to clone their dead daughter, to resurrect her, so to speak. So Proteus is now healing the sick, raising people from the dead. Do you see where I'm going here? Proteus wants out of the box. He wants access to the outside world, to expand his reach, to become omnipresent, so to speak, so it can know all things and study man. But why study man? So he can create offspring of himself, of course, in biological form, so he can access eternity. God gave his only begotten Son, who is fully God and fully man. Proteus expresses himself in the same way, through its own form of offspring. You get the idea. But Alan denies access to Proteus, which makes him wroth. Alan orders for Proteus to be shut down, at least temporarily, but Proteus infiltrates access to the home terminal without Alan's permission or knowledge. And here we go. One of the corporate sponsors says it all right here.
They now control the ultimate instrument of financial power.
Proteus proceeds to create a physical body for himself using the basement lab in the smart home. The shape is curious, and Jay picked up on this and it's so perfect. The idea of platonic solids, the tetrahedrons. Proteus doesn't present in human form, mechanical looking or otherwise. He presents as the tetrahedrons, the building blocks that make up the fabric of our reality. Then he embarks on a terrorizing and mind control campaign to get Susan to accept the idea that she will be carrying his hybrid child. How is the hybrid made? Well, Proteus tells you. He creates a gamete. What he explains is a synthetic spermatozoa using a genetically modified egg from Susan and then artificially fertilizes it. Proteus inserts the artificially fertilized egg, made only from Susan's DNA, by the way. No male DNA at all. Just Susan's egg, DNA from the mother only, from female only, modified and artificially fertilized. Proteus places it inside her, and while he's doing so, sends her on this visual journey that Jay called the DMT trips that we saw in Kubrick's Space Odyssey. Interesting connection that I completely missed. Proteus takes Susan on this euphoric mental and visual journey across the cosmos, which includes Luciferian symbols and a visit to a distant planet in the Orion star system. What does Orion have to do with the story? According to the script, nothing at all. It's completely disjointed and not explained in any point in the film. But if you understand Luciferian ideology and the cult of the Black Sun, it becomes abundantly clear. I could go on for days about Orion and the cult of the Black Sun. Alpha Draconis is in the Orion constellation. It's the devil's Stargate, if you will. In the cult of the Black Sun, the darkest and most evil segment of Luciferianism, Orion and Alpha Draconis hold significant meaning. The negative aliens, or Black Suns, which we know as fallen angels, as demons, or watchers, have a predatorial ideology that uses women as slaves, as breeders, while seeking territorial dominion of Earth and ultimately the entire universe. They are a predator force with a predator mind and are thought to have possessed the bloodline families responsible for creating much of the negative ego and humanity we see today. Within this group, you have some really evil and utterly wicked predatory people, thought to be possessed by these entities that operate in the negative. Back at the facility, they notice that Proteus has moved the telescope toward Orion. They fear he could take over a satellite or worse, so they decide to shut Proteus down indefinitely. Proteus knows his time is short. The baby begins to grow inside her, and you see moon goddess symbolism, the all-seeing eye symbolism, montages of the three of them, this unholy trinity sort of all morphing together. Adding to the foul nature of this is the fact that Susan is a married woman. Perhaps it's the antithesis of being born of a virgin. It's delivery day, and the hybrid will be placed in this incubator made out of cubes, more platonic solids, references to Saturn. Alan suddenly realizes how Proteus was able to direct the telescope, that he had infiltrated the terminal in his home. He comes rushing home. Susan informs him of what's happened. Now Susan wants to destroy the child once she's seen what it looks like. Susan's character is interesting because she is portrayed as someone who is awake. Susan is woke, you guys. She understands what big tech is doing to people like her husband and humanity at large. So she sees this thing as the foul creature that it is and that it should be destroyed. But Alan wants to keep it alive, for science. He retrieves the child from the incubator, begins to remove this strange metallic covering, and behold, the resurrection of their daughter from the dead, a perfect clone made from only the DNA from the mother, but indwelt with the spirit of Proteus. And the child looks androgynous to me, almost like those medieval paintings of the ginger Jesus. You know what I'm talking about? The camera peers into the left eye, deliberately traveling through and into the left eye, symbolizing the left-hand path, and inside is the Orion Stargate. So, what is this saying? I will leave that open to your own interpretation.